Welcome once again to DAZN MMA. Sean O'Connell, Dan Hardy. Dan, the PFL just signed maybe the scariest man on the planet in Francis Ngannou. And in honor of that, I want to talk about the most intimidating fighters in the sport of mixed martial arts. I got a top 5, and then maybe you can give me the guy that this far removed, hopefully you can admit, was the most intimidating fight that you ever had to take yourself. The most intimidated you were standing across the ring from anybody. But you ready to do this? Do you have? Can I get a list of like 5 most intimidating fighters from you?
I'm good to go. You know me. I'm good to go.
All right. I'm going to throw out a number 5, top 5 guy for me that I think the reasons are obvious. Okay. I'm going to say that my number 5 is Yoel Romero. And he might be number 1 for a lot of people, but Yoel Romero is a dude that, I mean, I don't care what he's wearing. I don't care where he is. Any context, you could see Yoel Romero eating an ice cream cone sitting on the beach and be like, that's the scariest man that I've ever seen in my life. The way that he's built, his raspy voice, the fact that he's 40 plus years of age and still looks like that, all of it is so intimidating. I don't know if I would even speak to him if I saw him in person.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. He is terrifying. He's somewhere between a Bond villain and, I don't know what the bad guys are on X-Men, but Magneto's crew. You know what I mean? I can imagine him bouncing off walls and just pulling people's arms off and stuff. He is a scary, scary individual, and anyone that's trained with him will back that up as well. You know what he's physically capable of. Yeah, he's a freak athlete and a very, very scary individual. And I think, to be honest, I think he's gotten more scary, as the years have gone on. I think he's, taken a bit of wear and tear on his face, and it's just kind of made him look a bit more gnarly and a bit more, he's got to go into movies when he retires, for sure. Oleg Taktarov style, you know what I mean? Like the henchman in the background.
Absolutely. If you're a Hollywood casting director and you're looking for someone who's just supposed to stand there, be silent, and look scary in your movie, Yoel Romero is your guy, okay? My number 4, I hope he doesn't take offense to this because I might have to answer for it in person, keeping him all the way down at number 4. I'm going to put Francis Ngannou as my number 4, okay? Francis is a larger version of Yoel Romero, right? They're built the same. They're not the same species of human being as I am, right? Like, I take my shirt off and I look like a human. Those guys they've been carved out of granite. Francis Ngannou is a massive version of that. And we have scientific evidence when he went on that sports science show that he is like the hardest measured punch ever on the history of our planet. The dude's incredibly intimidating. He's also freakishly intelligent, speaks multiple languages, right? Courageous as hell. Not only in the way that he fights, but the way that he's willing to take risks in his life. He is a very intimidating individual on every front. I think the only reason, Francis, I'm putting you down at number 4 is because you've shown us the cards. We know that you're a nice guy. You're still intimidating, but we also know that you're a nice guy.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what makes him more intimidating, though. I mean, he's making sure you're getting paid a lot, so on his conscience, he's fine to punch you in the head as hard as he wants to. Like, there's something calculated and sinister about that. He's offsetting his conscience by making sure you're getting $2 million, because for the next 2 or 3 years, you're not going to want to do anything. You're going to leave the house. You're going to see Francis Ngannou in your mind. You're going to want to go back in and hide under your bed. It's compensation is what it is. That's what he's organized for his opponents. I still think I think 4. I mean, I would be terrified to let him know that he's ranked 4, to be honest. So I'll let you break that news to him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I hope he doesn't walk up to me at some point and be like, why number 4, Sean? Because I won't have a good answer for it in the moment. I won't be able to speak. I'll be too scared. All right. And then this is going to seem counterintuitive because of my reasoning for 5 and 4. 3, 2, and 1 are all guys for me that are on the opposite end of the like physical appearance spectrum. All right. They're on the opposite end of the obviously visually intimidating kind of guys, which makes them, in my opinion, far scarier. and you could put them probably in any given order. I'm going Cain Velasquez at 3. Okay. Daniel Cormier at number 2, and Fedor Emelianenko at number 1. Because all 3 of these guys could be the heavyweight champion of the world, the best pound for pound mixed martial artists in a given era, or they could be the plumber that shows up at your house when you have a clogged toilet. And that Dan Hardy is absolutely terrifying, because there's no obvious reason why these dudes are so physically dominant, badass, scary, and that is what makes them more intimidating for me.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of funny, you know. I often see them pop up on social media where it's like, believe you know, this guy beats this guy, and it's like Daniel Cormier, and then like The Rock or someone like that,
Yes.
and you're like, well, yeah, I mean, there's just no doubt Daniel Cormier would manhandle him. You know, I mean, he threw Dan Henderson 360 degrees in the air. It's like, yeah, it's terrifying. I do like your reasoning though. To be honest, when you went that direction, I thought you were going to go down the, you know, like the Cabbage Kohea, Roy Nelson, Tank Abbott route. I thought you were going to get like 3 like Walmart car parking lot kind of, let's throw down and the winner takes home this 96 Ford Escort that coincidentally hits as hard as Francis Ngannou. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like I felt like you were going in that direction. Okay, I'm gonna go in a different direction, because like there are certain fighters that you just look at and that you're like, there's just no way I would want to be anywhere near that guy. And interestingly, I mean, you know, having met a few of these people, some of them really hold that space. They're like that guy all the time. Others are not. Like, so
Yeah.
see, like I would say, so number 3, I'm putting Vanderlei Silva in at number 3. Now, Vanderlei Silva back in the Pride days, terrifying. Standing in the corner, rolling his hands, like glaring at his opponent. Like if he could
Yeah.
set them on fire with his eyes, he would do. And if he can,
Scalp tattoo. Yeah.
exactly. Head
Scary looking dude.
stomps, just wild, scary, feral individual. And it was the same thing with the shootbox guys. They were all kind of terrifying, but you know, Shogun and Ninja, not as terrifying as Vanderlei Silva. I mean, like the Japanese fans gave him the nickname the Axe Murderer. Like that just tells you it all. But then on the flip side of that, Vanderlei in Vegas, you know, he'd had his eyebrows fixed because of the scar tissue, and
Yeah.
you know, he had a chihuahua and a little pork pie hat, and you know, he was just a different character when I met him. He was awesome. I just thought he was amazing. But
Yeah, we can agree on pre reconstructive surgery Pride era Vanderlei being unbelievably scary. Yes.
yeah, terrifying. And you know, I always used to kind of embody that a little bit, but I wanted to be a bit more calculated. So I used to kind of try and channel my inner Vanderlei Silva back in the day. Absolutely. The other guy who coincidentally fought Vanderlei Silva in one of the best fights that you could ever watch, who absolutely does hold his you know, that aura, that terrifying presence. It's with him all the time, and that's Mirko Krokop.
Oh yes.
Like as I said it, I've got goosebumps. Honestly, he's terrifying. He's a terrifying individual, right? You watch that Vanderlei Silva fight. It is body head over like 7 minutes. It's a beautiful game plan. Smashes him in the body to the point where you can see the shape of his toenails. Smashes him again in the body, and Vanderlei Silva's still marching forward like a savage. And then next thing, wham, left kick, head side, just done, just scary. And then
Yeah.
nothing. And that's the thing. That's the reason
Oh,
why Fedor was scary, right? Because nothing.
right. Yeah, just no emotion. No, those people are scary. I actually kind of feel bad I left out Crow Cop now, because he's unbelievably intimidating. And add to it like the cool little catchphrase that was developed, right? Right leg hospital, left leg cemetery. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
Dude, he came out to Wild Boys. I mean, like, come on. He's a video game bad guy. I just thought he was fantastic. So Crow Cop was always
Scary.
really high on the list. You know,
Okay.
and honorable mentions. I mean, Peter Yan, same kind of thing. You know, stoic face, terrifying, pushes forward. Of course, the size thing. You know, Crow Cop's a lot bigger, so he's a lot more terrifying to me.
Yeah.
But there are like Ryan Gracie was a lunatic. Like, unfortunately, he's no longer with us. Lunatic, terrifying individual. And the other one was Ensign Inoue, who, since he's retired, he's just a lovely man. He's just like, he sells bracelets and
He's
he
gone the opposite way.
completely the opposite way. I mean, he is yin yang in a person. Like, you remember when he fought Igor Vovchanchyn and he was screaming in the corner when they stopped it because he couldn't stand up. Terrifying individual. I kind of went off on a tangent. I'll give you my number one.
Okay.
Lee Murray.
Oh, jeez.
Lee Murray. I mean, Lee Murray. He's they're going to make a movie about him. He stole 53 million pounds, which I don't know what that is in dollars, but a lot, like
It's a
70
lot.
million.
It's a lot of dollars. Yeah.
And like he was, and this is like the whole picture. Like, I remember seeing him at Cage Rage events where he was a psychopath. You could just see it in his eyes. There were a very few people I've met that have got that look. Ramon Deckers, same thing. Scary, scary individual. You looked him in the eyes and he was like, is he going to smile or is he going to bite my nose off? Lee Murray was the same kind of vibe. He was stabbed like 36 times and didn't die. Then he went off and robbed a bank and stole a whole bunch of money and now he's in prison. Like, if he'd have continued his MMA career, he would have been one of the most talked about middleweights on the planet. He was terrifying. Like, you remember when he ran through Jorge Rivera, the UFC debut armbar. Like, I'm disappointed to see what he didn't become as an MMA fighter, but as an individual, terrifying.
This is funny you brought up Lee Murray because a friend at home who's in sports talk radio, which of course is big in the States. I don't know how big it is over in the UK, but he's not a fight guy, right? He's like a American football, basketball guy. And there's a Lee Murray docuseries on Netflix or Showtime, whatever it is. He watched all of it and he called me. He's just like, hey, is this stuff about this Lee Murray guy all true? And I'm like, yes, it's all true. He's like, how have they not made this into a movie yet? So, like, even people who are outside of the MMA world have learned the story of Lee Murray and are scared of Lee Murray. So I think that he probably fits in a good spot at number one on your most intimidating list. Okay. I like what we've done here. There's a million honorable mentions, right? There's a bunch of really scary guys out there. You know who fought recently, who I'm intimidated by, even though he's smaller than me? Matt Brown. Scares the hell out of me, man.
Yeah. I nearly fought him.
When you were talking about those guys, the guys who kind of seem like that's who they are all the time, they're always in that space. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever seen the immortal smile. And he just seems that intense all the time. When you follow his social media, like, he's the guy whose warm-up music is like death metal and, and crying puppies. And you're just like, man, what is going on in this dude's head? That guy scares me a little bit, even though I'm bigger than him.
He is like, that elbow that he landed on Diego Sanchez is like, that's all you need to know about Matt Brown. Just that as a gift. That's who Matt Brown is. Bang! That is heavy metal in a single strike. I agree. Yeah, he was the fight that I was due to have before I was removed due to medical reasons. I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know it would have been a train wreck, which kind of makes me a little bit disappointed it didn't happen. Amazing to see him back in action, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's 42 years of age, still beating high-level guys. Never say never. Maybe that fight still happens between Dan Hardy and Matt Brown.
Why not? Bring it on.
All right, so now I got to ask you, if it's not Matt Brown, because you didn't actually get to fight him, most intimidating guy that you ever actually had to fight?
Well, it's one of two people, and I'm not sure which one to pick. Like, the thing is, one of my two picks is Rumble Johnson, who is no longer with us, and we all miss him very much. He was a scary individual. As a welterweight, as a middleweight, as a heavyweight, he was breaking people's jaws left and right. He was a wrecking ball of a person. I fought him, and fortunately, for 15 minutes, we grappled. So I didn't take too many really big shots. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here talking like I am doing with you right now. But to be honest, probably the person that overrides is Rory Markham. And I fought him at UFC 95. He was out of the Miletich camp. So he was one of the Robbie Lawler. I mean, there's an honorable mention for most intimidating.
Jeez.
He was he was Miletich, so Robbie Lawler, Matt Hughes, Spencer Fisher, Jens Pulver, of course, Jeremy Horn, your good friend. He was a lethal puncher. He'd never been the distance in 20 fights, and I remember being cage side when he knocked out, I can't remember what the guy's name was, but just deaded him, like knocked him out with a head kick, crossed his legs on the way down stiff. Like it was a beautiful knockout. And I remember getting the call from Joe Silver, and he's like, "Do you want to fight co-main event in London?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." He said, "You're fighting Rory Markham." And as soon as he did it, like the Matt Brown gif, I played that knockout in my head like 3 times and just put myself there, just stiff, knocked out in London. And like that was the first thing that went through my mind. And fortunately, the fight didn't last much more than a minute, but he was terrifying. I remember, and Andy showed up at Fight Week at 195 for a welterweight fight.
Ooh,
Yeah, big
that's
dude.
big.
Mm. Not as big as Anthony Johnson though. He was 214 on the night. Don't know how he did that.
Yeah, I remember getting on an airplane with Rumble. I was going to corner Demarcus Johnson, and he was headed down there, I think, to be like the fighter appearance guy. And I thought it was like Rumble's older brother or something. I'm like, oh, you look like Anthony Johnson, but you're a lot bigger than Anthony Johnson. And it was just him between fights. It was like a 230-pound version of him when he was still fighting welterweight.
Terrifying.
So,
So what
yeah,
about yourself? Who's the most intimidating person that you've stepped in there
man,
against?
you know what? I hate to say this. I don't like it at all because I ended up losing to him badly. I fought very terribly, but it was not, it was in the PFL, and it was Bozagita Tayev, right? Um, just an absolute killer with his Wushu Sanda background and I don't know 22-1 kickboxing record and nearly as impressive of a mixed martial arts record. And he was that same stoic, quiet, kind of scary dude. In hindsight, very nice individual, like family man, cool guy, but had the gray in the beard and just was like stared through you. Was like very confident that he was going to do what he ended up doing to me. And yeah, just a scary dude. I tried to diffuse that situation as much as I could, but in hindsight, I could admit like that's the guy that I was most intimidated by. Still excited to fight him. Still thought I could beat him, which I didn't. But yeah, he was very intimidating. And that is kind of the thing, part of the mystique, I think, with a lot of those Dagestani fighters, right? They don't speak English. You can't communicate successfully with them in most cases. They generally do not smile and laugh and joke with you. They are they're a scary bunch of individuals. And Bozagit was, if you watch, and I do, if you watch the way people interact, like during fight week, you watch especially like fight camps, and you see all of these other killers, all these other scary fighters being like deferential to Bozagit Atayev, right? Like he's the elder statesman. It's very kind of structured, and they're all just like, he's the one that they're showing the most respect to. All of that combines to be like kind of a scary guy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I remember some of the really old, DVDs back in the day that I used to watch when the abundance of MMA was not what it is today. We're very spoiled, and like there was some really good documentaries flying around, like Rites of Passage, which I'm sure you saw. There were ones about like the Shark Tank and the Lion's Den and stuff about the Inouye brothers. There was one particular one about Valetudo, Brazil, and there were
Mm.
2 Russian fighters that went over from the Red Devils team together to enter an 8-man tournament, a Valetudo tournament, no rules, and they ended up fighting each other in the final. And it was one of the most brutal displays of headbutting I've ever seen. And I think from that moment, well, you might remember them because they both fought in the UFC. Omar Suluev, who fought
Mm-hmm.
Chut Liddell, and Andrei Semenov, who fought Ricardo Almeida, and both really good fighters. But yeah, Amar Suluev was able to out wrestle him and just held him in guard and headbutted him to a bloody mess. And it just kind of, after that point, I just put all Russian fighters in that scary Red Devils category. And I'm like, just yeah, anybody but a Red Devil fighter, because they were terrifying.
And then they probably got on an airplane together and flew back home, sitting next to each other, bloody and messy.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt, no doubt.
You mentioned Jeremy Horn, my own coach, right? A guy I spent a ton of time around, right? And he's got that same thing where, like, physically not imposing at all, but then the skill set is so incredible. And he's such a good coach and training partner that you can't get him to beat you up, right? Like, even in jiu-jitsu rounds, he'll be like focused on your improvement and your learning in such a way that he will challenge you without dominating you, right? And the few times that we've been able to get him, like when he was preparing for a fight and the focus got to be on him, the few times where you get Jeremy Horn to go like pretty near 100% with you in a training round, and you're just reminded, especially in jiu-jitsu, of like what he can unlock, that's intimidating. Just to watch him like then get up off the mat and walk around and go play World of Warcraft and just be like the nerd that he is, and just know that, like, man, physically I'm stronger than that guy, I'm more explosive, I'm more athletic, I have just as good of endurance in most cases, but anytime he wants, he can separate me from my consciousness and rip my arm off. That's scary. That's very intimidating.
Yeah. And a hard thing to comprehend. I mean, I think we understand the intimidation of power punchers. I mean, Vanderlei Silva makes sense, right? Because he's
Yeah.
vicious. But there's something even more intimidating about someone that does look unassuming, you know, someone that can absolutely just strangle the life out of you, you know, whenever they want. I mean, you know, of course, Jeremy Horn's a legendary fighter, and you would never think walking past him on the street that he was as dangerous as he is. But it really is. It's a humbling experience to witness that for the first time, and sometimes I feel like we still need reminding of it. You know, when you kind of you watch someone do something and you're like, yeah, but they couldn't do that to me. And then
Yeah.
it's like what Khabib was able to do in, you know, in his career. Like as little as I would have liked to have been pinned for 15 or 25 minutes, getting my face pounded in by him, I would like to have felt that control and that pressure, just to kind of understand what, you know, what people are going through when they're up against it.
Yeah.
High level grappling is an incredible thing.
Which is why when I go back to my top five, right? Yoel Romero, he can grapple. He can also knock your face off, but he can grapple you for 15 to 25 minutes. Obviously, Cain Velasquez would just drown people in his pressure. He's very terrifying in that manner. Daniel Cormier, watching him lift and spike someone the size of Josh Barnett fairly effortlessly with his build and his body, and at, you know, becoming such a high level fighter and a champion in weight classes that are dominated by people who are 6'4" and 6'5", and Cormier's generously like 5'10", and then obviously Fedor Emelianenko. We've seen all of that, combine all that scariness with a guy who never smiles or says a word. That makes him number one. All of you in the comments section, let us know if we left any of the most intimidating mixed martial artists off of our top 5 lists, off of our honorable mentions, if we haven't mentioned their name, and there are plenty of them. We want to know who you think is the most intimidating fighter in the sport of mixed martial arts.